Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, or whatever time of the day it is that you're watching this content. I'm very sorry, but video number 23 is another talking head video. For those of you who don't know, the UK is still in some form of COVID-19 lockdown. The government are relaxing the rules slightly, but I have to admit I'm responding to appeals from local communities, certainly around the coast here in Dorset, to not travel, not go out and about, and to stay local to my home. A lot of councils have closed car parks and so forth to try and discourage visitors. Not that that appears to be working in some cases, but I'm electing to stay local and not travel out and about. That's my choice because I believe it's the right thing to do. So for the second video on the trot, you're going to have to listen and watch my face, for which I make no apology, because I think it's just a reflection of where we are and the times that we're in. So off the back of video 22, I've had a few emails from people liking the content, actually saying, you know, it's interesting to understand where people have come from. There were others that said, no, sorry, I prefer to see you climb a mountain, but as I've said, clearly that's not the case. But one of the other questions that's come up in the emails is, you know, blimey, Hugh, it's a huge leap from Formula One motorsport to standing on a mountain or standing in a valley or standing in a wood and capturing a landscape. So I thought for this video I would try and explain why is it that I choose to shoot landscapes. Well, what does landscapes mean to me? What do they do for me? Why do I not go and pursue something else? And I did touch on the reasons briefly in video 22, but for this video I'm going to just go into it in a little bit more depth. Yes, you'll have noticed I'm sat in my car. I'm actually in Salisbury Hospital car park. My wife needs to have some dentist work done, and that's why I'm sat in my car. So let's get into it then. Reason number one. I mentioned on video 22 coming across Steve Gosling and finding Steve's approach to creating images in general really eye-opening and really inspiring. Well, Steve's predominant subject was landscapes, still is, I think, to a large extent, and putting myself through workshops with Steve were in the landscape. So therefore the predominant subject that I learned from was the landscape, and that gave me a few things: an appreciation of the outdoors, an appreciation of how to compose a frame with all the chaos and all of the detail that exists in the outdoors, to communicate and put across a clear and simple and straightforward story. So reason number one would be putting myself through workshops and giving me a lot more exposure to the approach was all done in the landscape. It's where I learned to work out what was going on up here and try and capture that in a frame. So having done workshops in the landscape situation, it only seemed completely natural to then go back out into the landscape to try and replicate those lessons and try and put into practice what I'd actually learned. Reason number two. When I joined a camera club, and bear in mind I joined a camera club because I wanted to learn about other photography subjects, learn about what other subjects and so forth that were out there that I'd be interested in pointing a camera at, other than Formula One, of course. I looked at books and magazines, and of course magazines especially tend to cover a broad range of photographic subjects. In all of the magazines, it was the landscape photography subjects, maybe also some of the abstract subjects as well, that really caught my eye. And that, you know, if there was an article that I really wanted to keep and cut out when I had a magazine chuck-out session, then it would tend to be the one about the landscape, the one about, you know, going camping and going and doing a bit of photography or something like that. So to some extent, why fight what the mind will naturally settle on? I'm one of these people that I will go with what the mind feels comfortable, and landscapes just seem to be the next best subject for me to point my camera at. So that would be reason number 2, doing some research and recognizing that, you know what, I'm actually quite interested in improving my skills in landscape photography. Reason number 3, probably the biggie for me. I'm quite an emotional guy. Anybody that knows me very well and watches this channel will know I'm quite an emotional person. Always have been, always will be. I definitely fall into that bracket of wearing my heart on my sleeve. I don't hide my emotions particularly well. I still get emotional when somebody leaves the workplace, or get to the end of the film E.T. I still have a lump in my throat, and there are various television programs and movies and so forth that still tug the emotional heartstrings, even though I know what happens, and even though I know it's all completely made up and make-believe, it still has an impact on me. And some films are stronger than others. So when you bear in mind that with Steve and his approach to capturing a scene that communicates a message, a thought, an idea, an emotion, the next natural leap, if you like, was to find a subject that would enable me to communicate that emotion clearly and unambiguously. And a bit like recognizing that the landscape articles in magazines were the ones that drew me in, that caught my interest, were the ones that I would want to keep. I also recognized that there was an emotional component as to why that would happen. So it would be, I loved that particular landscape, or I've been there before and I had a fantastic time, so therefore that's something that I'd want to go and explore a little bit more deeply. And I think that's the key one for me. Out of all of the photographic subjects that I've explored, landscapes is the one that tugs on the heartstrings the most. Portraiture, yeah, all right, take it or leave it. Street photography, I have to admit, I find street photography a bit intrusive. I feel like I'm intruding into other people's lives when I look at street images. I'm not knocking it, by the way, it's just how I react to the subject. But with landscapes, being in a beautiful place, experiencing fantastic colour, experiencing fresh rain, a beautiful rainbow, those are the things that really, really impact me deeply. And I think that's why, for me, landscape photography just works. It's a vehicle for me to be able to communicate really, really clearly what's going on in my heart. And I know that sounds a bit arty-farty and a bit kind of far out there, but it's something I do truly believe. I love black and white, and I love black and white because of the mood that it can communicate, especially mood of gloom or foreboding or something like that. And black and white in the landscape is just so powerful. And yeah, I think deep down that's why landscape photography is the subject for me above all others. It kind of begs the question, why Formula One? And I think Formula One was the initial subject because it was accessible, and because, you know, I loved the noise of the cars. I loved the feeling of emotion of these things, you know, whip past you at 150, 200 miles an hour. Being able to work for a Formula One team as well as be a fan of the sport. I mean, any fan of Formula One would have given their kidney for the sorts of accesses that I had to the sport, and the capability to capture some of the images that I captured over the years. So I think Formula One was more, I was a fan of the sport and I had the opportunity to access it. Landscapes is more about being able to form that emotional bond, that emotional connection that me as a person just finds so important, so intrinsic. It's just so part of who I am as an individual in this world and on this planet. Everybody's reasons for why certain photographic subjects really work for them, or why they're attracted to the things that they're attracted to photograph, that they'll all be different, they'll all be unique, they'll all be a combination of upbringing, exposure, personal experience, as well as a certain amount of psychology, I think, as well. You know, as I said for reason number 3, I'm inherently an emotional person, and I think that's why landscapes, evocative landscapes, or even perhaps less evocative landscapes, just, you know, tick the box up here. Now, it's taken me quite some time to work out why landscapes appeal so much. You know, I've been shooting landscapes for a good 15 years. And it's only in the last 10 years or so that I've really sat down and tried to figure it out. And the reason why I tried to figure it out was because I wanted to come up with a mechanism that would allow me to respond to the landscape much more quickly. Having a family life, mixing photography with work, does mean that I'm not continually immersed in the art of creating images. That means when I used to go out into the landscape, I found it took me a little while to get into the groove, if you like, and really realize what was going on up here. I was almost relearning some of the mechanics of using a camera and not making the same mistakes. Taking a step back and sitting down and working out what actually drives me as a creative person actually enables me to flick the switch, push a button, call it what you will, and actually tune in much more quickly to what's going on around me and be able to respond to it such that when I get home, I am being constantly reminded, almost from the point of getting out the car, or leaving the car park, or even just walking away from my home. If this sort of thing appeals to you, if you find that you're drawn to certain subjects, I would encourage you to try and work out why. It's very hard for me to tell you how to work out what it is that drives you. I think you need to find your own way of doing it. But for me, it's been a massive benefit. I've been able to take that realization and feed that back in. And now, whenever I go out, I'm thinking about reaction, I'm thinking about stories, I'm thinking about ideas, notions, suggestions, thinking about, with every image that I create, what is it that I'm trying to say? And really be clear about it. And if I can't be clear about it, walk away from that scene, walk away from that view, and go and look for something else. I heard somebody say a while ago that you should try and come up with 3 little words that describe what it is that you're looking at, and include those 3 little words in your frame. If you can, then that's the frame to take. If you can't, keep hunting. I think it's just as relevant sometimes to walk away from a scene where you really can't capture what it is that's going on up here, and go and find a different vantage point, go and find a different view, and try it again. Again, a kind of a phrase that somebody used a while ago. It went along the lines of there's no point taking pictures that just aren't there, which means that why push the shutter button when you know deep down that when you get home you're just going to get that image on the computer and you're probably going to delete it. If that's the case, don't take it, unless of course you want to take it as a record of a view, of a scene, and you'd like to remember it because you'd like to see it in different lights, different weather conditions, etc., then it's appropriate to push the button. So for me, it's been a hugely rewarding process, and it's something I would encourage and do encourage others to do. Just leaves it for me to thank you very much for watching this video. I do apologize, it's another head one. I cannot guarantee that the next one will not be another talking head video. I'm still being ultra cautious about going out, and I will continue to be ultra cautious until such time that the situation really becomes a lot more comfortable. Please do consider subscribing to my channel. Click on the subscribe button below and then the bell button alongside so that you get notified when new content is added. Also, please do consider giving me a thumbs up, or if you don't like the content, please do give it a thumbs down. I don't get many likes and dislikes, but I think I've reached a point where I'd actually like to receive that feedback to understand what appeals to my audience and what doesn't. Until next time, everybody, please stay safe, please stay well, and I shall see you on the next one. Take care. Cheerio.